Hey, stepmamas, welcome to the Stepmom Unfiltered Podcast. This is your go to space for unapologetic, unfiltered conversations about the roller coaster ride of stepmotherhood. We're your hosts. I'm Adrienne.
And I'm Amelia. We understand that being a stepmom is like walking a tightrope in stilettos. So we're here to help you embrace the messiness, laugh through the craziness, and find strength in our shared experiences.
This podcast is more than just a series of episodes, it's a community for stepmoms to be real, raw, and unfiltered. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey of candid conversations, taboo topics, and expert insights.
This is the Stepmom Unfiltered Podcast, your sanctuary for real talk and real solutions.
Hey, welcome back to the Stepmom Unfiltered Podcast. Hey, Amelia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah.
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 You ready for today's conversation?
Oh, it's a doozy, but yep.
I think this one's fun because we have very, very different experiences and
Yeah.
it's just like worlds apart. So that's always fun to see the differences in how people, what people have been through and how they've navigated it. So, um,
Yeah. And the things that you think of after the fact. So yeah, in case you want to know what we're going to talk about today, planning a wedding as a second wife.
yeah. So let's dig in. So yeah, I mean, kick it off. Tell me. So obviously, Teddy proposed
He
and you
did.
said yes. And then what? The shock and awe
Uh,
hit you of like,
Actually, we have to rewind my
uh-oh.
top. Yeah. I, so disclaimer, sorry, husband. Okay, I will say he did it in the cutest way. However, it was very chaotic feeling to me.
Don't
I
worry,
had
Teddy. We're gonna have you on soon so you can defend yourself.
I I was out with a friend. We were Halloween costume shopping, her and I ended up going back to her house for a coffee after, and we were just like sitting at the kitchen table chatting, and I got a text message or a phone call saying like, when are you going to be home? Like Emma wants to say goodnight to you or something. And I'm like, what the heck? So I come home and it was like 9:30 at night by this time. And my birthday was the next day. So he wants me to like come and sit down in the living room. And I'm like, okay, like fine. So I sit down and my daughter handed me a card, like a homemade little card that she had.
That's so
And
cute.
I opened it up and on the inside it said, Mom, will you marry dad?
Oh, that's so
um,
sweet.
it was so cute. Um, I just, Teddy, I just wish it wasn't like so late at night and everything just felt rushed because we were trying to get her to bed and all the things. But yeah, so he didn't propose. Actually, my daughter did it. Yeah,
Okay, we're
yeah,
gonna need to hear the other half of the story when we finally get Teddy and Anthony on the
yeah.
podcast with
We
us.
will, we will. Yeah, no, it was super sweet. I love that he included her
Yeah,
in it.
clearly
It
good
made it
intentions.
very good intentions, just a little late in the day, and that was all. Uh,
Can you tell
but
we're
yeah,
planners?
I know, right? There
I
should have
love
been a
that.
whole itinerary.
So
Yeah,
once you said yeah, clearly you said yes, because here we
I
are.
yeah, here we are.
Um,
Yeah.
then when did it actually hit you? Like when it was it like, oh my gosh, I need to plan a wedding. And then what were your
Oh, I
next?
was in full-blown wedding planning mode instantly. My two very good friends at the time, um, they were so excited and they were like, okay, like we need to book you in. We're gonna go wedding dress shopping and da 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 da.
Oh my goodness.
It was like it was very shortly after we were engaged. Yeah, there was like no time being wasted. Um, which is weird because when I look back, I don't remember him and I even discussing like a timeline. Um,
Oh.
so I kind of look back and think, I don't know. everyone was just kind of jumped the gun and so excited to start planning that there was no real conversations had about timelines and what was realistic. Um, yeah. So when I went dress shopping, I will say I I definitely knew what I was looking for.
Mhm.
Um, so it didn't really dawn on me to ensure that, this didn't look like the previous wedding dress that he had seen. Um, that didn't come until later. Um,
How
yeah,
much
so the
later did all of that come flooding in, like with the like, oh my gosh, wait, I need to make sure things aren't the same as what he's already experienced.
it was the nitty-gritty thing. So it wasn't like the dress or the where we were getting married.
Okay.
Now, I also will say I had seen the wedding photos.
Okay.
And I did know the details of where they were married. So yeah,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
was,
that's not surprising, right? I mean, that you would have had those conversations and you've seen the photos and I mean, it's a part of your
yeah, I
partner's
mean,
past and that's
yeah,
a piece of it.
they're not like in my house. I didn't seek out a wedding album. They're on the internet. And I, unfortunately, again, used to be my own worst enemy and, let me go hurt my own feelings by looking at these, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so anyways, yeah, it wasn't until the nitty-gritty of planning the wedding that it started to dawn on me like, well, are these flowers, is this color scheme like the same? Because I didn't look that closely at the pictures.
Right.
um,
You looked close enough
I
to
looked
start
close
to
enough.
have
Yeah.
self-doubt and to question and let the insecurities creep in, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, ugh, no, okay. Yeah. Um, so I knew like what color suit he wore. I knew what her dress looked like. I knew where they were married. That was, kind of what I knew about their wedding. Um, so yeah, like the colors of the flowers really, it was like, oh, I actually should think about what my bridesmaids are wearing. And, is it going to be similar? Because I don't want it to be the same color. I don't want the
Right.
flowers to be the same. Um, and then, yeah, the nitty gritty, like the songs, like what song did they dance to? What song did he and his mom dance to?
Oh,
What, right? Like I didn't want a replay, and I certainly didn't want the people that had been at that wedding to be like, oh yeah, we he's done this before, right? Like, oh,
yeah.
take,
Well, and
uh
especially a song, like, music can bring out such emotion, right? It's a feeling, and
totally.
when people hear it, they they think of certain things or certain memories, and so when you mentioned, like, you wanted to be mindful that you didn't end up with the same first dance song or even the
Right.
same song for any of the wedding party people, that people were dancing to different things, so,
Yeah.
like, the mother-son dance and the father-daughter dance and those types of elements. I mean, I think yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, and I hadn't either until it was like those little things that we were having to talk about. And then it was like having to talk about it, right?
Right.
Which is not what you want to talk about when you're planning your wedding,
No, you wanna
you
be
know?
focused on your wedding and your relationship, and then here you're having to bring the ex into something that the ex should probably have no part in.
Right. And I think that is something that people really forget a lot of the time is like the past is just always present, no matter what. And that's the part that can be really challenging is, because when I'm planning my wedding, like, yes, I'm aware that he got married. I know all of those things, but like, I don't want to think about it, but I have to.
Well, especially the detail where once you know the detail, you can start to envision it and you start to see it vividly, and that's where I think it can creep into the insecurity coming out,
Insecurities.
and
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, so that was, I don't want to say it put a damper on the wedding planning, but it definitely did take
maybe.
some of the excitement out, like, because I had to put thought into the previous one
How
and
did
have those
you
conversations.
yeah, how did you navigate those conversations with Teddy?
I feel like it was just really straightforward, like, hey, like these are the colors I want for the bridesmaids. Like, you know, is that the same?
I love
And then
that.
the
Yeah.
song, like our first song that we danced to, was a very trendy song at the time. It was Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran. So like they obviously hadn't danced to that
Mhm.
years prior.
Right.
And then also like my sister and his old bandmates who were also his best men, um, they all collaborated to do a song together, a Christina Perri
Aw.
song.
I
But
love
I knew
that.
that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was interesting the way that all these little things that I hadn't thought about, you
Yeah.
know, um, crept in. But
Was there any point in which you picked something that was the same that he had to say to you, like, maybe not?
no,
Yeah.
no,
So
there was
that,
nothing. It
yeah.
was all very different. Like to give you just a little idea, like they had a backyard wedding,
Hmm.
um, smaller. Um, yeah, our wedding, we were married in a church. Um, I had a giant, what did the seamstress? I think I had 30 layers. Like my dress was
30
gigantic.
layers. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
she's like, I haven't done a dress like this in however many years. She'd been a seamstress for like 50 years or something. She was a
You went
wonderful woman.
you went full bridal. Like you wanted the works, the whole
It
nine
was like
yards.
yeah, it was a Cinderella. And I think looking back to it was like, oh, like I want something much more elaborate because
Mm,
I didn't want it to emulate in any way what he'd already done. So like we'll get married in a church and I'm gonna have this giant dress and you know, um,
Do you feel like you ever compromised what you wanted or who you were because you were trying to compensate for?
it's funny. Well, it's not funny, actually. It's actually the opposite of funny, but about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago, I can't remember. Um, I was talking to my mom and I said to her, not that I wouldn't want to be married, because like I love our life together and I love that we're married, but looking back, I kind of feel like I maybe planned the wedding out of insecurity. Like,
Mm,
if that
that's
makes any
real. Yeah,
sense.
no, it makes complete sense.
Um, because when my husband and I had been friends many years prior to us dating, and I think I've mentioned before, he went off and did his thing and I did mine. And when we had reconnected after we were both single again, uh, he had been playing a show one night. He's a musician. He had been playing a show, and I walked into this bar that he was playing at, and he walked over to me and he literally said to me, hey, do you want to go to Vegas and get married? And I was like, oh yeah, we'll go have an Elvis marry us. And that was like our first conversation that we'd had in years. And looking back, I'm like, it would have been so cool if we would have just eloped and gone and got married in Vegas by an Elvis and then, come home and done a little courthouse thing with our kids and our parents
Yeah.
and whatever. Um, yeah, so I really wish that we would have done that. But I do think that, yeah, my insecurities were driving me to have this more elaborate
Mhm.
event, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it does. It makes complete sense because it's not just the insecurities, but I think there's probably, and I'm not speaking for you, but just in general, like the feeling of needing to one up. And even if you're not thinking of it in that moment of like, well, I'm his wife now. I'm going to have the best wedding. I'm going to make sure, that
Yeah,
everything I do with him one ups the prior. And that all
right.
does drive from insecurity. But I
It
think
does.
in those moments, you don't even realize you're doing it, right? It's like
You're
it
right.
just takes hold of us and consumes us. And in the moment, we're sitting there justifying it to ourselves as well. This is what I
Mhm.
want. And it's my dream wedding. And it's this and it's that. And all our family needs to come. But when you start to reflect and peel back the layers and get really honest, is when you start to realize what you just said. Like you would have rather just eloped and had Elvis marry you in Vegas. And
I and it's funny because what you're saying, like that you're trying to one up. And yeah, that is kind of what it was. And I love I mean, we had so many people travel for our wedding and come and join the special day. And so, I don't regret it in that regard, because I do
Right.
appreciate that I had family, traveling from Utah and from out west, like
Yeah.
in BC as well, and Eastern Canada as well. Um, but yeah, looking back, I mean, we're not over the top people. So like,
Yeah.
well, I guess Elvis is kind of over the top, but
It's a
you
different
know,
way. It's a
in a
different,
different way. Yeah. And I
yeah.
think we both would have enjoyed the experience a lot more had we done that. And had I, and my husband at the very beginning was like, not that he wasn't on board, but he's like, we don't need to spend all this money on all these things. Like, we can go to the courthouse, we've got kids. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Um, and I wish that I would have listened, but I was very much like, no, we are,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
the other thing is, while you were the second wife, it was your first wedding. It was your first marriage.
yeah.
So there's maybe that element of like you wanted a wedding and you wanted certain things.
I
And that,
did. Like, I mean, I wanted my dad and my stepdad to walk me down the aisle. Like, I wanted
oh,
that
that's so sweet.
experience. Yeah, that can be a different topic. Um, yeah, I wanted that.
Wedding planning part two coming
Wedding planning, yeah.
coming
No,
soon.
well, you know what? We can talk about that in this episode, because actually that's an interesting conversation. Um, so yeah, I wanted both of them to walk me, because they both mean so much to me, and they both are father figures, and they've impacted me in separate ways, but you know, um, I just felt it was important. And so I I can't I think I called my dad. I don't think it was in person, but it was a couple of weeks before the wedding, and I just said to him, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. It wasn't really a question. It was more of a, just so you're aware, this is how it's going to go.
Mhm.
Um, and there was a little bit of pushback. He wasn't fond of the idea. And, I am his only child, and this
Yeah.
is his only, chance to be walking anyone down the aisle. So I can see how it's very special for him too. Um, but, he didn't make a fuss about it. The day came, and they both walked me, and that was that. And again,
Yeah.
nobody made an issue of it. So um
I feel like we need to have your dad on as a guest
I know.
to uncover his insights and how he felt, right? Because you're right. It's even if you weren't his only daughter, um, there is that element. I see this in my husband when we talk about our daughters getting married and things. And that's something that I think every dad dreams of and wants to have that moment with their daughter. And they want, you know, let's face it, men can be proud peacocks and
They can.
and so
Yeah.
that's their moment. And then I think that amplifies when there is a stepdad involved. And then there's that, it's kind of like with stepmoms, right? Like who's doing what and who's showing up at the school thing and who's
Hmm.
volunteering. Well, dads do the same thing when it comes to walking their daughters down the aisle. And he
Yeah,
probably
it's
had
just
some real feelings on it that others
he
struggle with.
yeah, he did. And they're very valid feelings. Like, I'm not trying to
Right.
disregard how he felt at all. I
Oh, no.
just know, for me, at that point in my life, thank goodness, I was at the point where that is what I wanted, and nobody was going to tell me otherwise.
Right.
And when it came to our father-daughter dance, I danced with him first, of course.
Right.
And then I had my dance with my stepdad. Um, because again, it was important to me to
Right.
have those moments, right?
Well, and
Um,
how awesome of your dad to respect what you wanted, even though he had his feelings, right? He may have started to express it a little bit, but at the end of the day, he honored what was important to you. And
right.
that speaks
Yeah.
volumes.
And that's the other part of our wedding. It's is the divorced parents, that everyone came together, all the families came together to be able to be there for Teddy and I that day. And
Mhm.
it wasn't about everybody and everybody else's feelings, and brother-in-laws seeing other brother-in-laws that hadn't seen each other in, 30 years and having to come together under one roof at a reception. Um, and everyone did so gracefully because it was a day for us and it wasn't about anybody else. And I think that there's a big lesson for people in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
at least for one day, put your differences aside and allow people to. There's so many people that talk about this, like, having multiple weddings or doing a big wedding and then a smaller wedding for the other part of the family. And I just think to myself, how dreadful.
Right.
I
Well, and
have to
it's
even think that.
so I want to go back for a minute because a few minutes ago we were talking about how there's this piece of you that almost wish, you had eloped and gone to Vegas and but yet you wouldn't have had that moment, right? Where you could be a part of bringing people together that hadn't been together in 30 years because of division in the family or divorces and different sides and just like the
Right.
natural, what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and how cool is that your family could come together and could put differences aside and all be under one roof
Yeah.
and
I mean,
have
even like
those moments and memories.
yeah. And that is special, right? Like, even my stepdad's family traveled like
That's so cool.
from Eastern Canada to be with us, right? So having, like I said, all the families were together,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, it's really special that they can do that. And I
Yeah.
think there's big lessons to be had,
I
to
love that.
parents, because as we,
Hmm.
we always talk about like, oh, when the kids are 18 and everything, we don't have to worry. And it's like, actually, but you actually do have to worry, because
Yep.
this is a prime example of when you need to, you know, again, put your
Right.
differences aside and let your children have a day that's not about you and your conflict and your past and all of that, right? And
Right.
so
Well,
these step family challenges don't go away.
no, they don't. There's a
They
lot
don't.
of major life milestone moments after 18, right? I mean, graduating college, getting
Yeah.
engaged, getting married, starting a family, being a
Yeah.
grandparent. I mean, the list goes on
Hmm.
and on. And at a point, we can all say, okay, wait, I got to get the kids to 18. I got to get the kids to 18. But then you still have to navigate what kind of
Oh,
relationship
it's
do you
so
want with
much
your
more.
children? And to your point, do you want them to feel like they're going to have two weddings just because adults can't get along? Or do you want them to feel
Yeah.
like, who's going to do this with me? Or am I going to hurt somebody's feelings if I choose this person? Or so, yeah, I mean, that's
Right.
probably a whole nother episode to unpack leading up to and after 18. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And again, like, I realize there are families that, of course, can't be in the same room. Like, I do understand that. But yeah, I think there's
yeah,
so many families too that just have conflict that allow egos to remain in the way and make it difficult even for their adult children. And I just think that's so unfair. Like, when I was a kid, my parents, we did things together. Like, my dad always came to my mom's parents' house for Christmas Day, like with the entire family and having Christmas dinner. And, that was for me, obviously,
right.
right? Um, Mind you, my dad knew my mom's family since he was a little boy. So, he did have a relationship with everybody. But as I got older, that stopped, right?
Hmm.
Um, and that's okay too, right? Um, and he can have my dad can have relationships with those people outside of the big family functions. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that.
mhm.
Well, it's funny. So when my husband and I got married, um, our girls did two things. One, as soon as we were finished with the ceremony, um, they all screamed and were excited and over the moon about we're sisters, we're sisters. Apparently, our wedding made them
Um,
official sisters. And so, and we encouraged that, right? We never referred to them as stepsisters. They were always sisters. And that's how
yeah,
we raised them as your siblings, period. There's no
yeah.
step in front of it. There's no bonus. You're just your siblings.
You're just
I
sisters,
mean,
yeah.
they understand the technical piece of it, but
Mhm.
we didn't emphasize that in our home. And we actually didn't even emphasize that between all of the extended families and our big blended family
Yeah.
either. They're all siblings, and that's how we refer to it. But the other thing was they made us promise that every 5 years we would renew our vows. And
Oh,
we had been talking about for our 10-year anniversary going to Vegas and letting Elvis marry us, but we didn't do it. So maybe for the 15th or 20th, we can
There you
align
go.
renewals and meet up in
Yeah,
Vegas.
we should.
And
Well, ours is next year. 2025 is 10 years.
2025 is 10. Okay, so we're gonna have to like split the difference
We
because
will.
2025 will be 12 years for us.
Okay, well,
So we'll
oh my
figure it
God,
out, but
that would be so fun.
yeah, that would be awesome.
Now, did you guys do anything like within your wedding ceremony or reception or anything like to include the kids? But I guess you
So, here's the thing. I never wanted to get married. I never wanted a wedding. And I couldn't believe that I said yes when my husband proposed. In fact, I think like within the 24 hours after, I was just in pure shock and running on adrenaline. And then probably 48 hours after, I was like, what did I do? Like, what did I just say yes to? What did I agree to? And then like had this panic. And my husband was very smart. He figured me out from the very get-go because he knew like, don't let her get away, propose quickly, capture her in the moment, and then have a wedding. Like we
yeah,
wasted no time.
no time.
It wasn't even a month between proposal and wedding.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and I didn't want a wedding. And there was a lot of pressure to have a big, massive wedding from his side. And I won't get into all of that, but I stood my ground and I told him, I will get married under these conditions. I will not walk down an aisle. I will not wear a big white poofy wedding dress. And we will not actually have a big formal wedding. We will invite our immediate family that's very close to us. We will go somewhere like on a beach. So we went down to, for those of you that know Southern California, Seaport Village in San Diego. And we actually didn't even have a plan. We didn't have reservations.
Oh my
We had a
God.
reservation at a restaurant. That was our reception after was lunch. And I was upset that some of my family found out and flew in for it. And I wasn't up. I loved that I got to see them. Um, I don't like being center of attention and I didn't want a
No.
big affair and a big to-do ha. And um, I was so nervous that I was like physically shaking and I couldn't even walk. And then my brother and my husband had this brilliant idea to break rules. And there was this little like pond that had a little like wooden bridge, but it was roped off. You weren't supposed to go out onto it. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
really dangerous or anything. It's just not where you're supposed to be. They had this brilliant idea that that's where we should get married.
Oh God.
And there was no stopping the two of them.
Oh no.
So, and I'm sitting there arguing. Everyone's standing around, and I'm like, no, we're not doing this. We'll just stand right here. We're good right here. Just start the wedding. And we had a friend who became an ordained pastor online. Like, we did this really unofficially. I know all the things that I agreed to. I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly, but
Oh my God.
um, and next thing I knew, I couldn't say no one more time. My husband scooped me up and handed me over the rope and set me down. And there I was standing, and there was no getting off. Uh, and so then we had our wedding, and I'll never remember looking over and security's coming.
Oh no.
And there's my brother, turns around and stops security and tells him, you're going to let this happen. We just need a couple minutes. Just take another lap around. We'll be gone before you get back.
Oh my God. And did they?
They did. They did.
Yeah.
So it was really simple. And in fact, I
Yeah.
wore a dress I had in my closet that was just like a navy blue sundress. Um, and we went out, I spent more money buying the girls' clothes. And they wore white. I wore navy blue.
Nice.
And it was just really simple and
Yeah.
low key. And the thing we did do was we obviously didn't do a honeymoon. I mean, we had 4 kids, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not leaving them with Nana and jet setting off or something
Yeah.
elaborate, not to mention the finances of it. But the next
Mm-hmm.
day we made the whole day about going to a theme park and spending time together as a family, and so that's how we incorporated them. They had little bouquets, and then they got special bracelets so that we all have
Yeah.
one that's matching in our wedding colors and
Yeah.
things like that. So um But like I said, it was so fast. I didn't have time to do all the like Pinteresty things or to think about like,
Totally.
oh, are we doing vows to the children or like that
Right.
all those things came after where I was like, oh, we could have done that or we should have done that. But
Mhm.
honestly, I didn't have regrets. Our girls felt incorporated into it. They were so young and we made it about them with the dresses and the flowers and the bracelets and the family day instead of a honeymoon. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it just, we joke. I mean, my husband jokes. He's like, okay, so for the 20 year, will you walk down an aisle in a wedding dress? And so it started out as the 10 year, turned into the 15 year, and now it's at the maybe the 20 year. So, maybe the 15 we'll do Vegas and meet up with you and Teddy, and maybe the 20 I'll
Yes.
walk down an aisle.
Yes.
But yeah, so
That's amazing. No, you're
yeah.
right about the part of like the kids being so young and not really, because that's kind of the same as me. Like after the fact, I realized like, oh, people really do like a part of the ceremony where they're like including the kids and like saying
Mhm.
like, the stepdad saying vows to the stepdaughter. And for a while, yeah, I was like, I kind of was like, oh, we should have like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I messed up. We should have done that part.
That's how I
But
felt for a while. I messed up. I was like, "Oh, I didn't do this
yeah,
right. Oh, did I do enough for the kids?" And then it's like,
but
to each their own. Like, why is it
yeah. And
it
I
is a
mean,
great idea, and for those that do it, I applaud it. I do think it's wonderful. And I also think it's like our kids loved what we did do and that we did make it like afterwards, like I said, we
right.
had lunch at a restaurant. That was our reception, if you will.
Hmm.
That was air quotes for those who aren't watching the video portion of this. And then because of where we were, we did all these like they had a carousel and face painting and all these other family fun things right there where we were. So
Right.
I mean, that's how we made it about the kids. It was about
Yeah.
the experience and the memories. So
Yeah, our girls I had dresses made for them. They were my quote unquote flower girls that, so
mhm.
I hear, raced down the aisle. There's no video evidence of this, but I heard they walked very quickly.
That's hilarious.
Um, yeah, we did the same thing, the bracelets, to match their dresses, but also the bridesmaids' dresses and their little bouquets. And they were included, they had a dance at the
Oh,
reception that was like for them.
that's
Uh,
sweet.
yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
tried to find little ways to include them, but yeah, the one thing was I kind of beat myself up over not including them in the
Yeah.
actual ceremony part.
Yeah. We also didn't have like a first dance and those types of things. I
Right.
mean, we didn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and his side of the family was not happy with me. And I'm okay with that because it was our wedding and
It
it was
was
supposed to be
yours. Yeah.
about our union and us coming together. And that's not who I am. And at the end of the day, I was I was about to compromise and have this huge reception and all these things just to make them happy. And
Yeah.
I finally looked at my husband and I said, "This isn't who I am, and it's not what I want, and it's not me being genuine and real." And
Right.
and so then he looked at me and he said, "Then we're not doing it. It's really simple." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay." So we did what
Well,
worked for
and
us and our relationship, and that's how we've approached everything. And I also think that's part of why our marriage is where it's at and so healthy and has, made it through all of the challenges and the chaos and the conflict. Because at the end of the day, we always come back to who are we, what's important to us, and what is in the best interest of our children and our family. And when we make decisions from that place, things always work out.
yeah, and I think it's just kind of goes back to what our message has always been on here is like there's not a one size fits all way to do things. And that goes, it's the same for second weddings. Um, do what feels best for you, what feels right. But PS, don't let insecurities drive your planning process.
I love that. Our little PS
Uh,
tagline. One size doesn't fit all. And PS.
and PS. Yeah.
I love that. Well, we hope
All
this has
right.
been a helpful conversation. If you're engaged or planning a wedding or considering it or it's in your future,
Mhm.
if you'd like to connect with us or have other topics you'd love to hear us discuss or questions you'd love us to answer for you, you can submit those on our website at theartofblendedchaos.com or connect with us through direct message on Instagram at theartofblendedchaos. Have a great day.
A quick disclaimer to cover our asses. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on today's episode are the speaker's own, so if you didn't like them, why didn't you turn us off sooner?
The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. If you need support with a specific topic, you can do so by booking a one-on-one coaching call through our website, theartofblendedchaos.com. This podcast is not intended to replace professional, legal, or medical advice. You seriously didn't think we were lawyers or doctors, did you?